Nadeau here. He is an attitudinal healer. His work is in the area of community building and the use of ceremony to bring about awareness of that which is considered sacred or spiritual. He founded a healing center that is a 501c3 nonprofit called Spirit House Center for Attitudinal Healing, which works with community to address various needs, such as life-threatening illnesses, caregivers, women's community, men's community, sound healing, shamanic drumming, Course in Miracles, Heart Circle, all sorts of wonderful things, healing retreats. He also has a private company called Shamans International, which was originally established to address cause-related marketing, business giving back issues related to environmental and humanitarian issues. And he's going to lead us at the conclusion of our panel discussion and some sound healing and some ceremony to bring our time together to an end. So welcome, Ron, and everyone else. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's awesome to have you all here. And I'm going to try to help you moderate questions. We are here and we are available to answer whatever questions you may have.
Brian, I thought there was some implication that you could kind of skip the drugs and get the effect with just your body or with foods or with different ways. And that's always been something I wanted to do is like, you know, somehow not have the drug part and still get the effects that I want. And do you think that's possible?
Oh yeah, totally. And that's totally what I intended to imply by that. You know, whether or not you're taking one of these entheogens or whether you're ingesting another plant or mushroom or anything, you know, your body has a tendency towards these experiences regardless of ingesting something or having something tangible in front of you. So you know, really there are countless other practices that can allow one to integrate these experiences that one does have as a result of ingesting a substance, or that also allow a person to have an experience kind of on a more sustained basis, something that can be done over time, you know, whether it's you know, eating more whole foods, less processed foods, committing to physical practice, whether it's exercise or play or dance, yoga, meditation, any of these kind of things. Really, there. I mean, maybe you guys would like to speak to this as well. But sure.
So I think you're talking about the endogenous release of chemicals into the receptor systems that really produce a spiritual effect. So I think this is, you know, the teaching of the ages through spiritual practice. Certainly meditation is one of the ways in which you stand at the doorway to go into the heart. And it's really, you know, the wonderful thing about working with plants and entheogens is that it teaches us how to navigate, not only on the inner realm, but teaches us how to navigate here in our waking reality. And so that's the key. And so the experience that it gives us is an opportunity to recognize right relationship, and that which is spiritual, that which is sacred, that which is held as really in the highest sense of love's presence in our life, and teaches us how to extend love and to receive love, giving and receiving and receiving.
I noticed you mentioned a little bit about teaching there, and I think that might be the little bit of the difference here, because it seems like when you say that you can do these on your own, you're sort of like taking away the element of the plant teacher. Like, sure, we might be able to get the endogenous ligands to do similar things and have the same mystical experience, but it's almost like saying, I've heard all the lessons of my grandparents, I don't need to listen to them anymore. You know, so I think there's an element of plant teacher, which maybe isn't talked so much about in the biomedical community, but like it's something to think about as far as what other elements are happening here besides just the chemical reactions. Is there a deeper knowledge? Is there a deeper wisdom? Is there a deeper like sacredness, as you're saying, to the plant that maybe we just can't get through our own sense? And maybe there is, as you said in your lecture, about this relationship, you know, building that relationship with the plant. What is that relationship? Is it just our chemical makeup, or is there something deeper? guess not a question, but
It's a beautiful point. It's a well-received point. And in the discussion about the mushrooms and the relationships to the other plants that are in the forest, this mycorrhizal relationships in which there is a communication and it works for the well-being of the plants, the trees, everything that's alive. We're part of that system. And just if we're eating carrots or if we're eating mushrooms, we are receiving the benefit of something that's being transmitted to us. So we are, I heard it described as the neurons of Gaia that are firing. So the more that we understand this relationship and we get in the right relationship with it, then we're able to function and operate out of, I think, a much deeper sense of realization, commitment, and peeling away the layers that are constantly being referred to as the ego.
It seems interesting to me, so one thing I noticed in this conversation about exogenous and endogenous neurotransmitters or ligands is that morphine and endorphins aren't the same chemical, and anandamine and THC aren't the same chemical, but DMT is DMT. And so I'm curious if you might think it's significant that that the endogenous and the exogenous ligand in this case are the same thing. Does this somehow lend more credence maybe to the ayahuasca experience, or it's because you could write off psilocybin and say, well, psilocybin is this outside thing, and you're putting this outside thing in your body, and yeah, it causes this weird interaction. But with DMT, it's you already have that. So that's the prompt maybe. What do you think?
Well, I think the use of exogenous DMT, if you were to compare DMT or ayahuasca, and sure, traditional ayahuasca use is going to be Banisteriopsis plus a DMT containing leaf or bark, and that experience is going to go through oral ingestion, so there's going to be different forms of metabolism, and quite commonly the most frequently used of DMT, pure DMT, is going to be either vaporized or insufflated, and probably to a lesser extent taken with a main inhibitor. And so when you look at these two worlds, some might say that they're actually profoundly different in their terms of effects. Definitely the duration is going to be much different, and that's going to majorly be because of the oral metabolism versus the instantaneous inhalation. Also associated with the fact that there's a MAO inhibitor present versus just vaporizing DMT, where there's no MAO inhibitor to prolong the effects. Subjectively speaking, I think there's a lot more information being transmitted through the oral ingestion of ayahuasca and the ceremonial aspect that also goes with it, singing the Icaros and being held in a ceremonial space versus what generally can be, or maybe perhaps not, a different types of ceremonial space through the vaporization. One might think that there's even Banisteriopsis cavity, the ayahuasca vine, is said to be a great chelator and can actually pull out heavy metals and physical toxins out of the system. So that's a biochemical look at some of what might be going on. There's just so much plant intelligence associated with that medicine, and then when you're comparing it to the pure form of crystalline DMT, there's definitely different shades of information that are being presented.
This question, pardon me, might be better directed toward you, Ms. Emerson. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. So the research with the veterans sounds very promising, but I wanted to ask you, do you foresee the likelihood of these trials including people who are caught up in geopolitical conflicts, not just the veterans, but maybe the people, and also the drug wars here in America? I mean, there's a lot of people suffering from PTSD.
Yes, yeah, and they're not meant to, the trials are not meant to only be for veterans at some point, but it was important. In the scientific community, there's some thought that different types of PTSD might be treated in different ways. So far, we're not really seeing that, but they wanted to put different people with different triggers for PTSD in different trials,
Okay.
right? And we don't really believe that that's necessary, but politically it's really important for us to also do a veterans study because that is what has the most attention right now, and there's so many veterans returning from PTSD that, you know, and there's so much call for help out there right now for veterans. But the study in Boulder is not just for veterans, it's for anybody, and the study in Israel is definitely meant for people that have been victims of terrorist attacks as well as people that were in the military. So they're definitely open to treating everybody.
I wanted to ask you, something fascinated me was the fact that you said the FDA is actually open to this, and considering the sort of publicity with the FDA during the night and MDMA, I find that kind of amazing, actually. What do you think was the impetus of that? Was it, do you think it's specific people at the FDA that are working with this group, or do you think it's a trend?
Well, I think there is a little bit to all of what you're saying in that we have a really amazing reviewer group. And so sometimes it does depend on what group of the FDA you're working with. And they're great, but there's also was a big push within the FDA to measure things based on scientific merit and not politics. And that's why NIDA is so difficult for us to work with, is because that is not the push at NIDA. It's very political.
And NIDA
National Institute of Drug Abuse, and because it's a scheduled drug, especially for the marijuana. So NIDA is a big deal for us with marijuana, not as much for the MDMA. We have to go through the DEA to get licensing. I have stories you wouldn't believe what we have to go through in order to get small amounts of MDMA stored. But then we have to go through NIDA to get marijuana because we have to get the marijuana from the government. They have to give us what they've grown, and so they do not place scientific value over
and their marijuana isn't necessarily the best either.
Exactly. But, you know, that's part of our point is to work within the system, that to show that we can work within the system, that we will do everything that we have to push to work within the system, and that if they aren't willing to work with us, that we will make sure we publicize that.
Well, you know what? Thank you for doing the work you're doing. I think it's really amazingly important and spectacular that you're even getting as far as you are. Harold,
so thank you for being here and illuminating my brain. It's awesome. My question is for anybody. I have trouble integrating the psychedelic, the creative, the unmapped realm with the mechanized world that you were saying, the dead mechanized world. And there seems to be a push to kind of shut that world, the psychedelic world, out so that I can integrate myself as a developing human being into the mechanized world. And I'm wondering how you integrate both those realms in your lives.
Beautiful question. Well, the mechanized world is a very linear world. It's the expression of the ego that pretty much upside down and inside out from what we refer to as the realm of the spiritual, or the sacred, which is not so much of the head, but is really of the heart. So spiritual practice, whatever path that may be, including working with entheogens, and specifically focusing in this group to working with entheogens, is to work from the place of the heart, is to really filter everything from the head and just refilter, recycle it, take it through the heart. And instead of the head informing our lives completely and wholly, is to just say, well, wait a minute, what's the heart? I mean, it's been proven that the heart is 4,000 to 5,000 times more magnetic resonance than the brain. So why not use it? Why not drop out of the very strong linear way in which we've all been raised and enculturated, and work with this non-linear realm and be open to that. We talked about this the beautiful ceremony that we had with that wonderful jasmine elixir was to be with it for a moment, to hold an intention. That was a wonderful ceremony. It was a wonderful exercise, and an opportunity to drop into the heart and allow the heart to inform the head, and not the other way around. I mean, and that's it's a little radical in academia, but we can still do academia, but just take it to the heart and let the heart continue to impress the brain and the mind and what we ingest in our thoughts as well as into our body, and allow ourselves to be in a more peaceful, loving state in which we have the opportunity to extend love and to receive it.
I would add to that, that there's a piece in just choice, and we live in a society that can easily beat the enchantment out of us, and to choose to see the world as an ensouled place with meaning, and to remember what things might look like through the eyes of a child, where everything is new and worth touching and tasting and probing and poking, and everything's fascinating and exciting. That's maybe one way to just choose to look at the world through enchanted eyes and to believe in things like unicorns.
I think there's entheogenic world that comes from, I don't think they have to be separated, that, and I know if Rick was here, my boss, he would be, he would have lots of words of wisdom for you, but I can just tell you, for operating in maps in our kind of their day-to-day workflow, but this kind of question always comes up is how much do you have to operate in this the kind of conventional world, and how much psychedelics we brought into the world of business. It's for each person, right? And to maps, how much can maps be involved, and still have credibility. And Rick is a strong proponent of we are not one or the other. We want cultural contexts, and one of the ways that we do that is through the work at Burning Man, of making sure that we have a psychedelic resource tent, place for people to go. And a lot of times people have tried to get Rick to stop doing that, to stop supporting that, because they're afraid it's going to get us into trouble, because it looks like we're promoting the use of psychedelics and we're giving people a safe space to come if they are having a psychedelic emergency. But we've had so many good things come out of that harm reduction that we do, and by providing that. We had one of the guys that we work with in the military show up at the Burning Man Psychedelic Resource Center to talk to Rick about how wonderful it was, what he was doing. Right? So there's not necessarily, he's proved to us over and over and over again, there's not a wisdom cut off between the two.
I recognize we all have different frequencies of value to add to your statement. So my perception is, I think it's really important to speak your own inner truth and live in the flow. Life isn't made or created to be difficult. Answering a very linear question, I can give you an answer in linearity, is it's really important to speak from your heart and do what you love, and then translate that into something that works in the mechanistic world. So how can you share your gifts in reality and make it sustainable for yourself? And when you're truly living your passion and you're emphasizing your gifts and you're just being that vessel, the abundance comes. And so I think it's really important. I too don't think that there's a work or a play or a this or a that. it's a holistic being, it's a holistic form of life. And I think it's important to just always be yourself, emanate your true beauty in all situations, and always speak from your heart.
I'll add a little bit too. I'd say that, kind of bouncing off the idea that, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but thinking about it in terms of, there's a right place and a right time for everything. And the difficulty we're at right now is that the pendulum has pushed itself to one side of thinking for so long that we've kind of been stuck in this logical, linear train of thought in society and culture, this mechanized kind of version of reality. And to kind of get the pendulum to swing back over, kind of doing what Nick said and kind of living your own truth and living your own reality and speaking that, and meeting here in community with like-minded folks, and also being mindful to bring this out to people that maybe are curious, maybe that maybe friends or family members, teachers, students that are on the edge and maybe are having a hard time articulating starting a conversation, with the idea that it's a progression, and to really walk in the world, we have to put one foot in front of the other and start it from somewhere. We get that pendulum to kind of swing back and forth, and maybe even out on the other side, even out in the middle. A good way that we could do this is in activism, we would say like, there's this concept of like, well, if you see that this one side, if they have like a dirty cup of water, and you would look at that cup of water and you would not want to drink it because you see how dirty it is, you see how gross and vile it is, that you're not going to drink from it. Instead of saying, hey, you should pour out that cup of water, you instead hold up a clean glass of water and you drink from that, you get hydrated from it, you nourish your body from that. And eventually that person with that dirty cup of water is going to be kind of looking around, and when they're on the verge of thinking, I don't know about this water, they see you holding up your clean glass and maybe they ask you for a drink. So kind of thinking in terms of that kind of progression.
I had one thing that came up while I was hearing y'all speak. We're in the last few weeks of class here at CIS, so we're writing papers and such, and I was cranking on one this morning, and the quote that made it into my paper is about meaning and purpose in life, and so something along the lines of our calling is where our deepest gladness meets the world's hunger. So contemplate that.
If I could, I would just like to contribute a visual image, because this question came up in my research, and I had a chance to explore the art world a little bit, and a visual image that seemed to work that in response to your question. If I was thinking of ordinary reality as a smaller sphere, that we're kind of in and pretty much conditioned into, and then the non-ordinary or expanded as a larger one, and then you start to see the movement instead of being like a dualistic thing of moving from one thing to another back and forth. And that way it's an expanding and contracting that's always containing many dimensions and possibilities. So it's a breathing in a way. So I put that one out there.
Maybe get some advice from you guys. At this year's Burning Man, I had a full-on psychedelic emergency, and it's something that I'm still processing and still like really getting over. So I was wondering if you had some kind of advice on like coming back from like repeatedly, worst, most terrible sensation like times 1,000 that I've ever felt. So it just was so draining that full on like kind of almost wrecked the burn, but it was good. Anyway, just trying to, I don't know what it did to me, but I don't know. I feel like I got like my soul out or something. I'm just trying to come back from that. I don't know.
What was it?
It was about 400 micrograms. That was something I could come down, but like an hour later, someone gave me some Salvia. I'd never tried it before. I like full on lost my mind, but it was hours. It just brought all the bell back up. Terrible. But yeah, just the visuals and the images and the sensations. And, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it did to me. It's stuff that I know. I don't know. Maybe it was like how real. It's like the whole entheogenic question. Like, what is this really real? What's like all that?
I would say first off that you took Salvia. That overwhelmingly is what I've been hearing happen with Salvia for a long time. It's common. Just knowing that is kind of a good place to start. I'd also say that speaking with a healthcare provider, be they a doctor, naturopath, social worker, counselor, therapist, to kind of integrate what happened in that experience would be like the number one thing I'd recommend, and the number one thing that I always try to recommend to my friends, my family, anybody that's doing this kind of work. There are countless number of even ayahuasca ceremonies and retreats that happen over the weekend, and people go and have these incredible experiences, these life-changing experiences, these experiences that they have no idea what they mean, or that they're having a hard time with and they're having a challenging time with, and there's no context or conversation that happens with, well, what happens next? So I always advocate that my friends that are even doing ayahuasca work go and have somebody that they spend time with during the week, that they have an hour that they go and visit with and sit down with and talk about what happened, what it means for them, what it means for their life, and these kinds of things. So pulling, basically creating a context where you can hold that information together with the help of somebody that's, done that themselves and is also trained to do that. I mean, we're in a perfect place. Probably half the people, if not more, in this room are doing that work.
Integration is so important that we just keep finding that over and over again. So you had an intense experience and you haven't had a chance to have integration. So I just, what Ryan was saying, that just from personal experience, I had something happen that was an psychedelic experience that was extremely intense and brought up a lot of feelings around death for me, and it really was a huge struggle for me. And I was like, all right, so this is what I'm supposed to process now after that. And it took a long time, and it wasn't going to go away until I dealt with it. And so I did a lot of reading and I did a lot of meditation, and ended up in a much better place than I was. But sometimes we're not ready for what those experiences bring up, and then lingering is so difficult. So integration is.
I'll piggyback on that with integration. We work with a population, we work in community with a number of different things, and we're a nonprofit as well, and we work with quite a few people dealing with life-threatening illness, cancer, and much of what you just described is in the depth of our group is what people are processing, integrating as a result of a cancer diagnosis or a pronouncement of death that they have received. And I don't mean to demean an experience, but in the sense that it's not just a bad experience or a difficult experience, but they're being told that they may have 6 months or a year or 2 months to live. That shifts things profoundly with people. So to be able to go into that realm of deeper examination and to integrate the process, to really look at that and say, could it be that this is an experience that in some way I'm giving myself the opportunity for clearing, giving myself the opportunity to see something true, and what we refer to as removing the roadblocks and the obstacles to love's presence, because we define health as inner peace, even if it's a stage 4 cancer, and healing as the process of letting go of what we find in beliefs and attitudinal, various types of attitudes that we hold. And so it really gives us an opportunity. So in many ways to kind of shift it around a bit, to look at it and say, is this the blessing or the curse. And in the end, I think the people that pursue the path of opening and integration and working with ceremony and ritual, and it doesn't have to be with entheogens, but that can help. But the timing has to be correct and discernment proper. But to continue on that path.
I might also suggest, it sounds like ERIE has a integration group, which I have not personally been present to, but integrating with a group of trusted individuals where you can truly share your reflections of your experience and have other people who are non-biased to your experience maybe provide some insight. Chances are you can find and hear exactly what you needed to hear. Also be patient with it. Be 100% sure that anything that's still up in front of you that is you're finding struggle with is there as an opportunity to grow and to fall in deeper love and connection with yourself. And so give it time, be patient, and you've already took the first step, which is asking for help and being present to the fact that this is really overwhelming. And so I think there's at least 5 people sitting up here that are willing to help you out in any way you can.
Piggybacking on a piece that Brian said, I just wanted to name in general, Salvia divinorum comes to us from the Mazatec people in Mexico, and in their tradition, they build a relationship to the medicine over time. And they start off, they take it only orally, and not even through the stomach. It's absorbed in the mucous membranes of the mouth, and they chew the leaves. And they start off with small numbers of leaves, and as they, over time of weeks, months, build a more of a relationship, they chew larger and larger doses. For them, smoking it is considered obscene, because it's such a powerful experience. So suddenly, it's a shock to the system, and because it's very, very rapid. When you ingest it, when you absorb it in the mucous membranes, even the large doses, it still lasts for an hour. So and the rise up is gentle, and the comeback and the return is more gentle. So that's just the smoked salvia experiences are, as Brian was saying, they can be a shock to a lot of people. So
I want to also just piggyback on that. It's, from my understanding, it's like salvia itself is feeling insulted by people using it in this way of like, smoking and get high fast, and not with any judgment around it. It happens, things are presented to us, we're all curious, we're interested, but one of the things I feel really strongly about is how we approach these medicines is extremely important. These are powerful teachers that hold high value in cultures around the world and are used to access information and bring healing and divination. And so what your intention is, what the mindset is that you bring to it, the setting that you're in, the quality of the medicine, the dosage, the type of emotional stuff you might be carrying with you, your physical body. I mean, Burning Man, we know, is a little taxing on the physical body for the most part. And then who's receiving you on the other side of this? Is there some room to be there to hold you if you're having a hard time, and even days and weeks out? So these are all constructs that,
Who's with the shaman?
Even with shamans, I mean, there's people in this room that have had experiences with shamans that have had a real disintegration, and it does a disservice to what a lot of us are up to in terms of trying to promote a real culture of wellness and care from the community aspect. As I said in the beginning, what's been driving my work is like, what are the principles and practices that can enhance these experiences for the individual and the community? It's not just about our individual, seeing God or pretty colors on DMT. It's what do we do? How do we bring this back into our life? How does this help us to be a more integrated, whole, wholesome, loving, caring being? At least that's how I'm looking at it. Let's do 2 more questions and then we're gonna. Yeah, I'm trying.
Do you guys know about MAPS work, doing harm reduction work at Burning Man? So MAPS does harm reduction work out there at Burning Man. And if you were having that experience again, or if you even knew of anybody out there, finding the Zendo, it used to be called the Sanctuary Project, it was a proclamation, 2 o'clock in E on the Sound Wall last year. You'd probably be there again this year.
And also Full Circle Tea House as well. The Tea House on the other side.
Yeah, directing people there is great, is welcome. And
We might
even
even have an art fair next year to help shine
and that's something even if it's not during the experience, if it's after, or if you had an experience even not at Burning Man, and you're still like, healing from something that happened months previously, there are people that are doing that work and they're doing that work and helping with that. So
I just had a quick practical question about Salvia. I've only heard of men having these serious breakthroughs. Has anyone else heard about this gender difference in Salvia experience?
I always hear that.
Because I've had incredibly intense experiences with females who just say, oh, it doesn't affect me at all. And I've heard that many times. That seems really fascinating.
I don't know if there's anything to it, but I have.
Any females had breakthroughs?
Hello?
I know plenty of females that have.
I have something, but then again, I am very much in touch with my
All right, last question.
Yeah, I had a comment that you sparked in my mind. You said something about Salvia itself sort of being offended by this, and it reminded me, I think there's a quote or something from Maria Sabina, who was the psilocybin shamanist, I guess, in Mexico, and after Watson kind of came down there and brought all the hippies and that whole invasion or whatever, she said that the little ones stopped talking. And so it's interesting, we have like a cultural responsibility, I think, to like consider when if I drink a bunch of ayahuasca here in the United States, like what am I doing to people in Brazil who already have a relationship with this thing? So it's just a consideration.
Any other final comments?
I think in that, just in regards to that question about ayahuasca, I think that the intelligence that's in the plant kingdom is really knows what's going on, and I think that the Amazon and South America are under attack. I think the wisdom of the plant is to go out and be with us and teach us and connect us and bring us back into a holistic point of view.
Intention is everything. That is all.
Yeah. No. Yes.
Thank you all.